Hello, my name is Mike Hranica from the Devil Wears Prada, and I'm hanging out with Rob on Punkvideosrock.
10 years, probably a little longer, 11 years of the Devil Wears Prada. Tell me about that evolution of the band from the beginning till now.
The way I often sum it up is there's such drastic change and evolution from a person that's 16 years old to a person that's 27 years old, as am I. I think a lot of it comes from that. A lot of it is growing older, and I think that it's definitely within direct correspondence of everything we do, sound-wise as well. I don't know. I think a lot of that change takes place, and I think a lot of it is pretty evident in the members as well, in the fact that the three of us live in Chicago, Jeremy, Andy, and I, and then Kyle lives right around the lake in Niles, Michigan, and just getting out of Ohio, and the fact that that's where the three of us landed, I think is kind of important. So, yeah, I think it's pretty simple and plain to be honest, as far as just that change that happens from a person moving through their 20s.
Do you think that's like also the key to the band's longevity?
I feel like the longevity has always just been the fact that we're blessed and we're thankful that, people still want to have us and people want to listen to us. Yeah. And every time we sit down and write again, I still have that drive in me that says there is something more to say through this platform.
Right.
As long as that exists, I'll be playing with the band, Longevity, I think, is it's like any relationship. I think our common form in our morality is a very important part of us making it this long. And I think that it creates a good set of guidelines for living together on a bus, or living together writing a record, or living together recording a record.
Right. Now, with those 10-plus years of being a band, you guys got to experience pretty much all the changes that the music industry has, gone through. One, for example, was you guys were one of the few bands that are still out here today that experienced MTV and Fuse. Can you tell me what that was like for you guys when when your first video was, aired on MTV or Fuse?
It was huge, we're that generation, I remember sitting on my summer vacations, and I would go down to South Carolina to visit my grandma and grandpa, and I'd sit there watching, music videos all day on MTV and Fuse. I remember, like, the Bon Jovi, It's My Life, it's a horrible music video, and, like, Californication by Red Hot Chili Peppers, which was a sweet video. And that sense of nostalgia and actually achieving the same kind of thing was, I won't say monumental, but somewhat mind-baffling. But at the same time, I don't think it's any mark of achievement or real success. Looking at where MTV and Fuse are now, it kind of tells that story in and of itself.
But would you say that, do you feel if they were still around promoting these bands, do you feel the band would be higher than it is already? You guys are still up there in the charts.
Yeah, the press would be awesome. We're not going to say no.
Right.
But at the same time, that it's just taken on a totally different look. It's so much internet, and that's all good and fine because we're still around, and playing in a second band and trying to get that off the ground in this different time is interesting, and sort of a bit of friction or some contrast from where I came from and where Prada was 11 years ago coming up. So I don't know, man. I think that the internet, it creates like such a familiarity between fans and bands, and that you're like Twitter, you're just a screen away from talking to someone that you're looking up to or whoever. However, I'm rather bitter and pessimistic as far as all of that. I don't like the obligation, and I've always been rather keen on the mysterious aspect of musicians, which isn't to put me up there as being of notoriety, but anymore I just hate when bands are diluted to band members rather than a band being a band.
That's true, and that happens a lot more now that the internet is involved.
I agree.
Now back to evolution. When writing this new record, Transit Blues, which is back on Rise Records, you guys were initially with Rise Records and you jumped back with Rise Records. What was the reason for going back to Rise Records? Why did you guys enjoy being on their label?
We've known Craig and Sean since Sean joined with Rise, and we knew Craig when it was, just like 4 bands, and we were the first to turn around a few albums. So that familiarity again was very important. It's a smaller operation, which I really like. I like being able to a little more transparency to accountability, if that makes sense, as far as knowing exactly what's going on here and there. And I loved Roadrunner. I still have a great relationship with certain dudes there. However, at the same time, when you have these really big operations, these grand scales, it just feels like a lot of people getting paid for things that you're like, what do they do? Why doesn't that person just do it? And all, which I don't mean to bash that and everything, but we know how Rise is, and we knew what we were going to get into working with those dudes again.
Right. And jumping into this record, who are you today as a writer? Where's your mind at this time around?
I mean, I think there's a lot of levels and layers to what goes in, especially when we make something that isn't meant to be totally concentrated on one theme or aspect. Yeah. Excuse me. But in correlation to your question, I think one of the biggest things where my mind was at was, as a writer, was very much I didn't want to be talking about the same things as every other band and what I've already spoken of. I feel like there's this kind of obligation for metal to have this sort like destructive, violent nature in lyrics, and I'm just totally over it. I mean, like, I like the bands that I like, whether that's their lyrics or not, but really in correspondence in who I like and who I listen to are not talking about these grand notions of death and these end of world proclamations, as I keep mentioning. I like mundane matters. I own a 2-bedroom condo in Chicago. I have 2 dogs. I have a lovely girlfriend. I drive to Whole Foods and buy groceries. I cook. I drink beer. I watch sports. Like, there's nothing so drastic and melodramatic as what the metal genre has just like kind of set as a norm without reason. Right. And I wanted to really try and defy that as the lyric writer of the band, and looking at and maintaining my honesty as I always have with Prada.
Now with this record, it was a different producer. Dan was the producer this time around, and this was the first record without Daniel. Mm-hmm. So how was that going into the studio with a new drummer for the first time?
We were in the studio when Dan decided to leave, and I've known Giuseppe for 9-10 years now, ever since his first band called Once Nothing, or the first band we played with, which was like some of our first shows, and we just hit it off tremendously. Some of those guys I still talk to very regularly. Yeah. So yeah, it was automatic to bring in G. G is the best. He's a machine as a drummer. And yeah, I look forward to really starting from scratch with Giuseppe, where we were at, and we demo everything before we get to the studio and have like a frame of reference. And it was just programmed drums, nothing brilliant as far as fill-wise or anything, and gave that to Giuseppe. He learned the songs and played them, and wrote his own parts. However, I'm really excited to sit down and go like, all right, where do we start with Giuseppe? So that's really exciting. I think the world of G and his playing, and as well as Dan Corniff. He's mixed a few of our other things, and we did the Space EP with him. And like, it was just like off the bat, just like, oh yeah, he's one of us. Yeah. Just demented sense of humor, super funny, and a really good sense of workflow, and being professional, but at the same time not, standing there with a whip going 10 hours a day and setting like hard time schedules when, you can't say, hey, be creative at X o'clock, right. 2 o'clock, you need to write a new part that describes this. I'm like, well, no, I might do that at, when I feel it. So right. Dan really gets that, Dan Corniff, and we love the guy.
Now, out of the producers that you've worked with, who has been the most challenging to work with in the studio? Not necessarily like the toughest guy to work with because he was a jerk or whatnot, but more so like, who challenged you the most?
I feel like anyone that knows us and our backstory already knows the answer to that. It would be Mr. Adam D. I love Adam. Yeah. I think Adam is a mastermind. I think he's a genius. But he's very strict, and he will beat the life. He's super, like any good engineer producer is. He's very intelligent and intentional as far as being able to read how far you can push the musician or the vocalist, the drummer, and see how far you can push them to yield the best result. And Adam will push. But I think the world of him. I miss him all the time. I haven't seen him in years, but I text with him sometimes. I texted with him when he won Price is Right, which I don't know who is aware of Adam.
That's right. I remember something about that being posted.
Yep, Adam Duckwitz won the Price is Right because that is the life of Adam D. I love him so much. I miss him.
Now, over the years, you've mentioned a few times that you love playing the guitar, but you don't give yourself enough songs with guitar in them. Do you do that on purpose? Like, why is it that you don't play the guitar as much as you say you love it?
Well, it's coming up. It's increasing, which I absolutely love as a part of the live set. We're not going to write 3 guitar parts for every song because I want to play them live. Yeah. It's usually the way it works is we'll write a song, fill it up as much as we can, and then figure out what we want to do with it live. And with certain songs like Supernova or something where it's like, I'm really just screaming through these verses, I'll do that and then hit the choruses and then the lead on the sort of bridge. So it's really just recognizing it later on. And a lot of what I'm doing isn't some fucking Slayer solo or something. It's power chords to thicken up parts. And as lame as that is, and I'd love to do more, we'll get there.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I love playing guitar, and whenever there needs to be that third in there without compromising what I obviously have to do vocally, then I'm super pumped to be able to fulfill that live.
Now, over the years, with recording and writing new material, is there one song in specific that has been the hardest to create, whether you reconstructed it multiple times or you let it go for quite some years and then you brought it back?
We follow through. It's weird, we've never really had any B-sides. We have tons of songs that we scrap, but we never finish a song and then say, oh, that didn't make the record. But we actually did this time, and I don't know when we're going to put out that song. I still have to finish it vocally. Yeah. So maybe that song is up there once we release it sometime next year as a 7-inch or something, which I'm stoked on. I'm stoked to finish it, but it just wasn't coming to fruition as it didn't have enough of its own identity to make the album. And I love shorter albums, shorter songs. So I also wasn't trying to force another 13,
Not doing a mixtape.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that one was tough, but I'll also mention Lock and Load, which is a new song off of Transit Blues, which approaches the U.S. Gun epidemic and our problems with these shootings as incessant as they are. Quite a political song, I believe, and it took a lot of reworking to where I wanted to be sure the song was still voicing where I'm at as far as common sense gun laws and gun control, but at the same time, it's not a matter of Obama taking your gun or Clinton taking your gun. Right. And it's also not anti-military, and that was a real point of intention. Was I didn't want to make this anti-gun song and make it seem as if I was disrespecting those who serve this wonderful land of ours. Yeah. So that one was not one of the easiest songs we've done, for sure.
The tour ends in 2 days in Berkeley? Yeah,
this is second to last show. Tomorrow we're in LA just hanging out, going to a Pens Kings game. I'm a Pens fan, so I'm super stoked to see Staples Center and see my Pens. We're finishing in Berkeley. And
any plans for some more touring for the remainder of the year, or you guys are just going to relax for the rest of the year?
We are not. We are doing 3 weeks-ish overseas with Memphis, Mayfire, Silverstein, and Mont. So the same bill as this. We're splitting 2 buses. We'll be bunking up with Silverstein, which I'm pumped on. I love them more than I can say. I just did Shane's podcast, and it was so much fun. We're going to be drinking a lot of beer with Silverstein overseas through the rest of this year, and it's going to be great.
Cool. And lastly, for those that haven't picked up or listened to Transit Blues, what's so different about this record, and why should they go ahead and pick it up?
I've been rambling at you about things that we wanted to do to mix things up, but another real point of concentration was that it shouldn't be as predictable as what 818 was. And as much as the 818 material I liked, it just felt like certain songs like Rumors or Number 11 just felt like it blended together, and it just felt so here comes the chorus where Jeremy sings. That happens. Oh, that's the first chorus. The next verse is going to be a breakdown. We really wanted to avoid that and just let things happen a little more naturally and try to, with the bands that inspire us, to look at the fact that to just basically defy songwriting, predictable, stereotypical, run-of-the-mill songwriting. I think that created a different result that for those who have not heard Transit Blues and would be interested, I think that's an interesting perspective to take in looking at the album and looking at what is meant to be and as has been regarded as a more natural effort, which I am quite proud of.